Oh man, can my heart take much more than this? Hey everybody, welcome to After Action Report, your recap show for all Showdown matches to keep you caught up on all the action. I'm your host, Megs, here for the Call to Action podcast channel on our 75th episode. And if you've been paying attention, I decided to change things up a little bit. My camera is mirroring now versus what StreamYard normally does. If this is freaking you out, leave down in the comments and I will consider changing it back. But hey, it's the 75th episode. I figured I would change something up a little bit. But without further ado, let's jump right into all the stats and all the storylines for Friday Night Titans episode 19. So it looks like we are going to be still getting full-length Friday Night Titans episodes at least for the next several weeks. They have several that were already fully developed as far as storyline beats. So we're going to be getting several of those over the next several weeks. And then when they don't have those, we're going to be getting individual matches between now and Spectacular in October. So that looks like that is the plan moving forward so far. But for this episode in particular, we saw a match end in tragedy multiple ways for a particular competitor and some intrigue for some longtime favorites. First, we see Parker, Dan, and Kate talking about the upcoming match against the Barbarian. Dan has an idea of what Parker can do after he beats the Barbarian, which both Parker and Kate absolutely love. Now, I'm sure you guys had a lot of speculation on what exactly it was that Dan told Parker. Would love to see in the comments what you guys thought initially. We're actually going to get to talk about what actually happened later on in the episode, but I'd love to hear your initial thoughts. I didn't necessarily have a strong idea, but what I am strong in my feelings about is I find it amazing that we are getting to see Dan as a heel in this season. It's been one of my favorite things that we've gotten to see this year. But let's move into our next scene. We see Rachel and Moose come across Whitney, Ty, and the Flouse in the hallway where Rachel challenges the ruling class to a match against the next chapter right then and there. So this is going to be our undercard match for the event. And I will just say that it was very interesting to see this little feud starting to build up between Rachel, Whitney, Ty, the Flouse, and Moose getting thrown in there. Moose not quite necessarily wanting to take on that villainous revenge persona, but is going to back up his partner who wants some revenge or vindication for the singles loss that she took to Whitney earlier in the season. Without further ado, this is our undercard match, the ruling class versus the next chapter. Coming out of round one, the ruling class is up by 6, 20-14, with Ty getting the perfect round with the bonus, Whitney coming away with 9 points, Moose coming away with 8, and Rachel rounding out with 6. In round two, the ruling class defers to the next chapter, who's been away from 2000s and ended up taking Michael Keaton. They come away with 6 out of 10 points, checking down to multiple choice twice, misses both questions, and they are stolen for 2 points worth of steals. The ruling class spins away from Middle Earth and ends up taking Ramus and the Reitmans. They come away with 8 out of 10 points, checking down to multiple choice once, misses that question, and it's stolen for 1 point. Now, with that miss and the steal, the next chapter avoids a KO in this match, with the ruling class gaining 3 points to now be up by 9, 30-21. However, in round 3, Rachel misses her 2-pointer in directors, which gives the ruling class the win via TKO, with a final score of 30-21, where the ruling class answered 26 of 28 questions for 93% accuracy and scored 88% of 34 available points. The next chapter answered 18 of 27 questions for 67% accuracy and scored 60% of 35 available points. While the next chapter was able to capitalize on the steal opportunity that was afforded to them in round 2 to avoid a KO, the ruling class still comes away with a TKO victory because Rachel missing her 2-pointer did mathematically eliminate them in the match. It was still a lot of fun to see the banter back and forth between the 4 of them, and in the post-match, we saw something very interesting. We see the Flouse almost getting flirty with Jen, and Jen kind of enjoying it. Normally, she is one who is very impervious to such things and keeps herself very well composed during interviews, but something about this is getting to her. actually, I wonder if this has any connection to the flowers that were sent to her 4 weeks ago back on episode 15. Leave your thoughts down in the comments if you think there's any connection. Now, this does take us to the middle of the episode, and after the break, we get another scene before we jump into our main event. We see Brendan Meyer studying when he is approached by Roxy, who encourages him to go to Christian to ask about getting a shot at a number one contender singles match, leaving Brendan with a lot to consider. So we see Roxy making some moves here under the guise of being concerned about Brendan being left out of the spotlight and planting some seeds that we will talk more about later on in the episode. But now for our main event, number one contender match of Robert the Spider Parker versus the Barbarian. Coming out of round one, Parker is up by 4, 11-7, getting a perfect round plus the bonus. In round two, Parker defers to have the Barbarian spin first, who spins away from DC and ends up taking mixed bag, which he then sweeps for the full 10 points. Parker decides to take Star Trek on his first spin. He comes away with 9 out of 10 points, checking down the multiple choice once, but not giving away a steal opportunity. This gives Barbarian a gain of 1 point, but Parker is still up by 3, 20-17. In round three, Barbarian hits a 2-pointer in graphic novels, misses the 3-pointer in animated, forcing him to have to answer the 5-pointer in Spider-Man, which he misses. And this gives Parker the win via TKO with a final score of 20-19, where Robert Parker answered 16 of 16 questions for 100% accuracy and scored 95% of 21 available points. The Barbarian answered 13 of 19 questions for 72% accuracy and scored 61% of 31 available points. So I think the old adage holds true here. You can't beat perfect. This is now the 5th time in Parker's career that he has scored a 100% accuracy match. So the Barbarian being down 4 points coming out of round one became an impossible deficit to overcome, in spite of the fact that he also was able to go perfect in his round two. And unfortunately, when you get into these number one contender match situations, it is very tough to expect to be able to win a match when you miss your 3 and your 5-pointer there in the final round. So Parker, once again, does not have to answer any third round questions, which gives him another TKO on his record. And while the TKO he got in his last match tied him for the most number of knockouts with Kevin Smets, this knockout now solely puts him in the most number of total knockouts in the IG division with a 7. Now, you do have to feel bad for Barbarian here at the end of this match because he does mention he's still without a manager, Gucci's not around, and you can see it's kind of starting to get to him a little bit. So maybe there might be some changes even more with the Finstock Exchange, with Gucci still being absent, and Barbarian just has not been able to get his legs underneath of him. Pivoting back over to Parker, we see that Kevin Smets comes in and has some strong words for Parker in the post-match interview. Leads me to believe that we are in for quite the title match. And it appears that that match is scheduled for July 29th, which should be, by my calculation, Friday Night Titans episode 22. But if we didn't have enough drama, after all the interviews are done, we see that Barbarian and Jen are talking, and all of a sudden Parker comes in and is appearing to want to talk to Barbarian about something, suddenly grabs Elvis and runs out the door with him, leaving Barbarian crushed and distraught. So apparently this was what Dan was suggesting back at the beginning of the episode, and I gotta say that was pretty shocking to realize that that actually was what it was. Elvis has been a staple here in the league, being on Barbarian's shoulder every time we've seen him from his debut back in season 7. Now, this actually does remind me a little bit of back when Finstock's mask was stolen back in season 5, but was then ultimately given back to him by Guy in season 7 after it was presumed that the mask was burned by Robert Meyer Burnett. So hopefully it is a happy ending for Elvis and the Barbarian. We're just going to have to wait and see if we get any more on this development, so definitely stay tuned because that was quite the shock. In our final scene, Christian is found by Brendan, who makes a pitch to him to get in on the number one contender path. Christian agrees, makes a call, and sets up a match between Brendan and William Bibbiani. Brendan is left surprised and a little nervous. So we know that Roxy knew that Bibbiani was possibly in the number one contender path based on her overhearing Christian's conversation on last week's episode. So it appears that she purposefully nudged Brendan to try and push to get into this number one contender path to purposefully pit the members of Shazam against each other. Now, we don't know yet when any of these matches will happen, but it appears that right now the plan is for Brendan Meyer and Bibbiani to face off against each other, and the winner of that will face off against Mr. Irwin in a number one contender match for a shot to try and take the title away from Sam Levine. So I am definitely looking forward to how this all is going to shake out, so be sure and stay tuned. And that is going to do it for this week's episode, but don't worry, I'm going to be right back here covering all the stats and all the storylines for the next Friday Night Titans. Now, next week's episode will be delayed slightly because of some travel plans I have coming up, but be assured I will be releasing an episode next week. Just keep an eye out on the socials for when that episode will be dropped. If you haven't already, make sure you hit like on this video, you're subscribed to the channel, and leave comments with your thoughts on the episode. The match breakdowns presented here will be posted on Twitter and Facebook. Until next time, for the entire Call to Action podcast crew, I'm your host, Megs. This is After Action Report, signing off.